California State Senator Joe Simitian from Northern California,
Right.
so we can't ask him any questions about Los Angeles and Glendale. But we get to ask him more interesting questions because Senator Simitian is on the last leg of a trip that has taken him to Turkey, Kurdish Iraq, or Northern Kurdistan. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm sure I said that wrong. Northern Iraq, which is Kurdistan, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, and Karabakh.
It's been a good long trip.
It's been a long trip. I'll ask you how it happened in a minute, but let's start with Karabakh because that's a place that unfortunately, although at the focus of all sorts of international discussions and concerns and everything, nobody's ever supposed to go to.
Well, it was a place I very much wanted to visit so I could have those firsthand conversations. As you can imagine, in the diaspora community in the United States, this is a source of conversation. I was on a formal delegation to Turkey and Azerbaijan and northern Iraq, as you mentioned, and of course I heard quite a bit about Nagorno-Karabakh while I was in Azerbaijan. So there was no way I was not going to follow up with the trip to both Armenia and to Karabakh, and it really was a wonderful opportunity to meet firsthand with the leaders in Karabakh, see what they're doing. Obvious struggles there, very difficult set of circumstances, but I think a lot to be proud of, frankly, in terms of both the 20 years of independence and the tangible accomplishments over that time.
You know, I always tell people, especially people in positions of influence, that you've got to go because until you see that geography, you really don't understand the issues of security and you know, everything that started the struggle and everything that's at stake now.
Well, that's right. You see the geography, you realize what the security implications of the geography are, and somehow it's never quite the same when you see it, whether it's in pictures or newsreels
or a map,
even with Google Earth, until your feet are on the ground. You know, spend the time from the vantage point in Shushi, look down and see just how vulnerable Stepanakert is under the wrong set of circumstances. And this is true almost anywhere around the world. I think of the ongoing debate or argument about the Golan Heights. Until you've stood on the Golan Heights and seen just what the geography is, it's hard to understand the geopolitical dimensions of the argument that go on about what seems a small piece of territory, but is critically positioned.
Well, given your very logical response, it's always amazing to me when the international community, international institutions, more correct, prevents its representatives from actually seeing the place on the ground, and B, when the elections, which were just held, as you know, the local elections in Karabakh, are disparaged, dismissed, rejected, even, you know, the Karabakh authorities are found guilty of holding them. When on the other hand, that's what they're supposed to do to keep the place running.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I can't speak for other countries. I do think, look, our U.S. State Department tends to err on the side of caution when it comes to travel by American citizens. I've often joked that if they had their way, they'd say, don't cross the street, you could be hit by a truck. Well, if you never cross the street, you'll never be hit by a truck, but you'll never see the rest of the world around you. So I think, you know, my own view is when I travel, I try to exercise good judgment, but I try not to let that keep me from seeing firsthand the dimension of the problem that is clearly yet to be resolved. I think in terms of the elections, it was interesting. While I was in Nagorno-Karabakh, the folks, you know, in government certainly were quite proud of the conduct of their elections recently. They felt that they had done a good job of demonstrating that the elections were free and fair. I'm going to spend a little more time when I get home to take stock of what the international community had to say. But I think, you know, always my view is, particularly for young democracies, is there progress? That's the first question. And then the next question is, how much more progress can we make and how quickly? Sure. Because I think we want to be positive about accepting progress where we see it, anywhere in the world. By the same token, I don't think we want to settle for less than what we think is the full measure of free and fair elections, totally transparent process. And so there's always that tension between, well, you know, we're doing well under the circumstances or we're doing better. And for that, congratulations should always be offered, but that should never be the end. That should be the beginning of the next step to go farther. As I say, in Karabakh, people in the government were very pleased with the conduct of their elections. I'm going to spend a little time when I get home sort of looking at on the one hand, on the other hand.
Tell us very briefly, because I know this is your last day in Armenia and you're going to run, tell us briefly about your reactions on the other stops during your trip. Turkey, Iraq.
Yeah, I think, you know, my grandparents fled the genocide from Anatolia, so, you know, a mix of reactions, as you might expect, as an Armenian American whose very existence and place in life is a function of the genocide. So to spend time in that portion of Turkey where I have roots just 2 generations ago brings what I would call very mixed emotions.
Sure.
But it was certainly an interesting opportunity to see the strength of the Turkish economy, so robust. A reminder that we really do need to pursue a fair and appropriate settlement with respect to the ongoing conversations between Armenia and Turkey. I believe that the eventual solution there in terms of opening borders will be good for both countries when that time comes. I think northern Iraq was an eye-opener for me. The images we see as American citizens are typically of other parts of Iraq where the security issues are so great. To be able to fly into Erbil to spend time. We had a chance to meet there with the president as well as the foreign minister.
Where did you fly from?
We flew from Istanbul into Erbil.
Wow.
And just walked off the plane, had a drive up to the presidential compound, met with the president there, talked with him, spent time with the foreign minister, had dinner with the governor of Erbil, did have a little time to just walk through the town, which I don't want to overstate it, but again, back to the sort of feet on the ground,
Sure.
Eyes wide open. The meetings are absolutely essential, but equally essential is the opportunity to just spend time walking about the streets, seeing how people go about living their lives, what's on the shelf, what isn't on the shelf. These can be very telling things. So a fascinating visit. Azerbaijan, on the one hand, I think, it was of no small interest to people there that there was an Armenian American leading a Senate delegation. I was with 3 of my colleagues, so I was leading a 4-member Senate delegation. Each of us represents close to 1 million people in California, so when we walked in the room, there was an obvious interest in how we viewed things, but there was an obvious interest in my presence as a leader, and that was, frankly, I thought there was value in leading a delegation of California state senators as an Armenian American elected official and having that be understood by the folks we were visiting with.
Huge message.
The conversation was, I would say, sometimes difficult, and I tried to be both a respectful guest in the country, but also clear about the fact that the point of view that was being expressed was not a point of view I shared.
Well,
was that artful enough?
That was quite diplomatic. I would love to introduce you to a whole bunch of other international influential individuals and wish that they would share that sort of willingness to go into those politically risky situations and dialogue.
Well, and I knew when I went to Turkey and Azerbaijan that there was a chance that my presence there would either be misunderstood or misrepresented. There's a certain risk to doing that. That being said, I think if you want to communicate the message that Armenian Americans are a part of the fabric of the American political system, then that's the way it gets done.
That's a great message. We're very happy that you were able to visit Armenia. This is your 2nd visit.
It is.
And hope to see you again here and perhaps stay in touch through Skype and see what the reactions are when you get back home.
Will do, and thanks so much for having me today.